Here we go. Welcome to the 1000 Hours Outside podcast. My name is Ginny. I'm the founder of 1000 Hours Outside. This is probably like the most surreal moment of my podcast journey. Candace Cameron Bure is here. Welcome.
Thanks, Ginny. You're so cute. You're so bubbly and I love you and your personality already.
This is really, truly surreal. I'm sure everybody who meets you feels the same way, but we definitely grew up in the era of Full House. And also, my parents were pretty strict about what we could watch. So, the kids at school were watching like Beverly Hills 90210. And even they didn't even really want us watching Saved by the Bell. That was on the off list. We snuck that one sometimes, but mostly as a family, we only watched a couple shows, and it was Full House and it was the Tim the Tool Man Home Improvement with Jonathan Taylor Thomas, and also like America's Funniest Videos. I mean, that was pretty much, and it was part of our family rhythm. So what a wild thing. It's really an honor to meet you. And interesting, as I was reading, I've got a couple of your books. I have Balancing It All and Reshaping It All. And I was
Okay.
sort of reading through and looking back through, and I've got a book from your book club subscription, which is so wonderful. I was really thinking about how much TV and entertainment has changed. And I hadn't thought about it too much, except for the fact that it's interesting that there was a time in life when media was fairly common across all households. And so there was sort of like this thread that, it was like every kid at school watched the Full House episodes. But now there's like 6,000 options you can choose from. Do you think about that much? It was like a totally different era.
Yeah, I think about it a lot because I've been in entertainment for 40 years, 40 plus years. And so as a not just an actress, but I'm a producer and I'm a director and I'm also the chief creative officer of a network and a streamer. And so when I'm looking at from all aspects business, you know, just like anything, you've got to change with the times. And we've realized over the years that viewing entertainment, television, movies is very different than it was in the 80s when you and I grew up. And it was a time of togetherness. There was a lot of co-viewing with parents and children, families together. And it isn't that way very much now. You have, like you said, so many streaming options. You have cable television. You have YouTube, which is like a whole thing on its own. And that's just scratching the surface. And so the options too, although there are thousands and thousands of options, they look very different for families today. And that's something that within my career and my business, I've been in family entertainment since I was 5 years old. I've never left it. I will never leave it. It's what I want to do. But finding projects that are good co-viewing projects that parents can watch with their kids and everyone enjoys it, they're few and far between. And quite frankly, a lot of the networks and streamers, they don't care that much. They really want like very specific audiences. They want the mom audience. They want the dad audience. They want the teen audience. They want the kid audience. They don't really care if everyone can sit down and watch it together. But there are still shows like that on both streaming and cable. But yeah, it's something that goes through my brain all the time as someone who's creating content and producing content throughout the year.
I didn't really think about it too much until I was like going back through these books and I was taking my notes, and there's a lot of authors probably talk about it, but there's this one in particular named Andy Crouch, and he talks about promise versus peril and how new technologies come along and there's so much promise, but they don't really ever talk about the peril side. And I thought, well, gosh, of course anyone would think, well, if there's five good shows, wouldn't it be great if there was 500 good shows? But then it does change. It really changed. Like that was a very much of a together time for our family. And I thought, gosh, it doesn't really hardly exist anymore. I think that that's wonderful, that that is your focus is togetherness, to this co-viewing experience, because And there's bonds through all of those stories. And I mean, even for me, when I'm talking to my friends, I'm going to be talking to Candace Cameron. Like everybody knows because everybody watched Full House, but that type of thing doesn't exist to the extent that it used to. Okay, I got to get it out of the way. I've got a bunch of just quick questions just because here we are and I'm doing it. Here's question number one. Okay, I'm curious about how much you remember. So you start when you're 5 years old. People can read your whole story in balancing it all. It's fantastic. The neighbor Fran and how you kind of got involved in all the backstory here and your siblings. I don't remember a ton from when I was 5. You're doing these shows. Do you remember like different episodes? Like how much of it do you distinctly remember?
I mean, listen, I don't remember what I don't remember. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There is a lot that I remember being on set as a kid at 5, 6, 7, 8, very specific commercials that I did and some movies that I did. But then I think at 10 years old, when I started Full House, there is a lot of memories, but actually probably less because there were so many of them and it was every single day of my life that they kind of all mushed together. I probably don't remember as much as when it was like one specific moment that I worked on that movie for that day.
Wow. And do you go back and watch the episodes ever much?
I haven't in a very, very long time. And it cracks me up because sometimes people will find YouTube clips of old commercials that I've done. And sometimes they're just flipping through channels and Full House will be on, or it's on Hulu, I think. I mean, all the time. Full House has never been off the air in almost 40 years. Never, which is crazy. Like, that was the Brady Bunch to me. Like growing up, the Brady Bunch was already old. We loved it. We watched it. It's still on today. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Full House has like surpassed that. But yeah, I don't know. I forgot what I was talking about.
Well,
But
they'll maybe send you clips. Do you think that
oh yeah,
most of them you would remember? Like, oh, even if it wasn't at the top of your mind, you see the Cabbage Patch commercial or something for Kentucky Fried Chicken, and you're like, oh yeah, I remember doing that.
those are the very specific ones that I absolutely remember. Hmm.
Wow. Oh, it's really interesting. I guess if you have really distinct experiences as a kid, they would stick in your memory a little bit better. Okay, so one of the things I learned in the book is that you had to do a second audition for Full House. The first one didn't go quite as well, and then your mom was like, "Give us a little bit more direction. She can totally do it." Do you think you would have gotten the part if not for that second edition? Audition? I think I said edition. Audition.
Question. Audition. Yeah, like who knows? I the answer is yes, I think I would have because even though that first audition wasn't great, the casting director already told me she was going to bring me back. But I was the one that was not satisfied with my audition. So that might tell you a little something about my personality. And I'm the one that said, well, it wasn't as good as it could be. So I need more direction. And my mom helped out. And so who knows? I think because of my brother, well, I know this. My brother is Kirk Cameron, and he had already been on Growing Pains for 2 years. So the producers of Full House had known at the time that I was auditioning that I was Kirk's little sister. So that was already an extra kind of plus in my corner that they were curious to see
And so
how I
as an
did.
elementary schooler, you're like, I could have done better. Give me another shot. So it's okay. So you end up on Full House and you're talking about the schedule of this. So this is a completely, I have two questions here actually. This is a completely different schedule than most kids grow up. And so you're 3 weeks on, 1 week off, basically during the school year. Taping, 3 weeks, and then 1 week off. So I've got two questions. The first one is, were those weeks off boring?
No. They were very restful, but still not as much rest as you would think because depending on what age I was and what year it was, my schooling looked very different each year. So I'm still doing school full time as a kid. So some of those weeks off, I was then going and returning back to my classroom and then being with all of the kids in the classroom and doing that. So there was some sort of normalcy in my life, but any kid will tell you that's going to school, like that's never boring. And then some years I was only working with a tutor. So I was still having to go to the set every week, but there would be nobody on the soundstage. It would just be us kids working with the tutors and the teachers to do our schooling on set.
So then this is a question I have. I think it's rare-ish to have a childhood that's completely different than your children's childhood.
Mhm.
Has that been odd for you? So you have kids and they have not grown up. They've done hockey like your husband, or, I'm sure they've had all their amazing childhood experiences, but like, can you relate to their childhood, or how is it having a completely different one than what your kids have?
These are such fun questions. Nobody asks me these questions. I love it. Um, I've never thought about that. I think that for me as a parent, it was probably, I would say I was looking at it as more exciting because I didn't have a normal childhood. So to experience it through their eyes, like helped me connect in a really great way with my kids and then have some opportunities, even though that I was in the adult position that I didn't have when I was a kid. And that was really fun for me.
That is really interesting. So yeah, you get to experience it through the lens of your kids, and almost in a way it's all new. It's new, so it's maybe a little bit more exciting and enticing. Whereas for everybody else, they're like, yeah, I got on the bus, I did all those things, and it's not new and different. How interesting. So they've got this different childhood than you had. Do the relationships that you made in those years, so you talk about in balancing it all, you were talking about how you're just performing in front of people, all sorts of people. You're talking about Mondays and Tuesdays. We're doing these run throughs, and there's writers and producers and in network people, and they're changing the scripts last minute. Do you keep in touch with a lot of those people? Like, if, 30 years later, do you feel like you just have such a massive network because of all of these people that you met throughout those years?
I do have a pretty big network of people. Some of those people, though, on the original show on Full House, they're long retired by now. I was a kid and they were probably in their 40s and 50s. And,
There's
so I would say not as much about those relationships with people behind the scenes, although there were a handful that went on to Fuller House, which was, the newer show that was on Netflix. And some of the people from the original Full House worked on Fuller House, which was so exciting and we loved it. And but based off of that and just being in the business for 40 years, there's a lot of people in my life.
Yeah. Which, and I'm sure is hard too. And this book that I have from your book club is about friendship. And you talk a lot in this book about friendship and balancing it all. You talk about being bullied at school, which I think that most people wouldn't think would be happening, and just how tricky it can be to build friendships. So you're like, are people here for the right reasons? Do they only care because I'm on television? I would imagine that's really tricky to navigate. And so I love that your book club takes all of these values, and you get a book every month and you can read it with your kids and have that co-viewing experience, but with a
Yeah.
book. You're
Yeah.
having that together time. Okay, here's my last just silly random question. Do you, like, if someone were to yell DJ, would you
Which
respond?
they do a lot.
They do a lot.
They do a lot.
Still.
Um, Still, yeah. I think because, Fuller House, the fans have never gone away. And then what Fuller House did was bridge this gap from all the moms and dads that watched Full House as a kid. And I hear the stories all the time, and it, it's just sometimes it can start with the kids had discovered Full House and they say, "Oh, mom, dad, there's this new show, you got to watch it." And then moms and dad go, "Wait, that's like that's not there's an original show where there are actually kids on it." And then they go back and they have them watch the original show. Or it can be vice versa. Families that just watch Full House, they feel it's safe for their kids. Then they discover that Fuller House is on Netflix and they go, "Okay, let's watch a few episodes." So I think forever I'll be called DJ in my life. And I love the character, and I just love what Full House and Fuller House has represented to so many families, and it brings so much joy in my own life. So yes, I will respond to it. But if we're at Disneyland and you're just like shouting my name, DJ, 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 I probably won't turn around, just so it's not causing more distraction for
Is it,
everybody.
but is it second nature? So like, let's say we were at the same park or something, or you're at a park and someone yells out DJ. Do you turn for that? Like, is it in you to be like, yes, I'm also, I don't know, de-respond?
It totally it depends on the tone because
Okay.
I'm very aware of it. So when I hear DJ, I know it's for me. But and it also, I mean, in full transparency, it depends what I'm doing at the moment. If
Yeah.
I'm in a moment that's like a real deep moment with a friend or parenting my children, like no, I'm not going to turn around because I'm concentrated on the moment. But if it's just like an easy time and an easy day and the tone feels friendly and nice, then like sure, I'll turn around, give a wave, hey, yeah, it's me.
Also, my name's
Just depends.
Candace. It's incredible. Okay. Well, I appreciate you indulging me on these just random questions that I had that, I never dreamed that I would have the opportunity to ask. I love this book, Balancing It All, because you talk about just that there's very normal things that you're dealing with that everybody else deals with, transitioning out of different seasons of life, dealing with friendships. And you talk a lot about your family of origin and how your parents infused family values almost really before their faith journey began. And so you talk about actually how beneficial that was. I thought, well, that's an interesting piece that good values have a lot of benefits, even maybe before they're tied to faith, if that happens down the road. And so here you have this book club where you get a book every month and they're about different things like generosity and kindness and friendship. So one of the things that you talked about that I thought was really relatable in balancing it all is when seasons change. And so you talked about how you were pretty excited. You didn't know Full House was going to end, but then you find out and you're an adult at this point. So you're like, oh, I'm going to go on. And obviously you're doing all of these cool things. You're a hard worker. I'm going to go off and I'm getting married. But it really wasn't what you expected it to be, at least for a while. You talked about how you've got this dreamy husband, but you had to move and you're away from family and you're trying to fit in with the other hockey wives. What advice do you have for someone who is in a transition that makes them feel pretty rocky? Like, especially if you're expecting for it to be one way and then it kind of isn't.
Yeah. Well, I think that's actually a really big part of my faith growth or my journey of faith growth because before then, like you mentioned, faith was a part of my life, but not it wasn't all about my life. I didn't it wasn't like I was thinking about God and praying and talking to God before I would make decisions or things like that. It was just kind of like, yeah, I believe in God, sure. And being a moral person, growing up in a moral home, it was always about, do unto others as they would have done to you, like treat people with kindness and respect because that's how you would also want to be treated, like do those things. And so faith wasn't always connected for me in that way. And and I would say that I probably ran to all the wrong things in a place of feeling isolated and feeling lonely and just and truly feeling disconnected in what life was what I thought it should be, what the reality of it was. And so my advice to people is that you can turn to all the things. You can turn to all I mean, there's always friends that you can talk to and vent to, and that can be like a good thing, yes. Um, you could go to therapy and talk to a therapist about it, and I would say that can be a good thing too. But then, of course, there's all kinds of things that we know aren't great for us. So you can have more and more wine every night because it just kind of like helps you forget about it. But we know that's not a great reality. You can, like I did, I mean, I used food to just stuff my feelings down and just overate and overate and overate, creating very unhealthy relationships in my life. And yet, what I learned through those few years, feeling really disconnected with my reality, was that God was just waiting for me to run to Him the whole time. He was just like, I'm here, I'm waiting. I know me, but you don't really tap into me. And I know everything about you, and I know exactly what you're going through, how you feel, and I've been there myself. And just come on in, start talking to me. And that was the difference maker for me. So as a woman of faith, that's going to be my advice to you is like, if you know, are trying all the other things and they're not quite satisfying or working, it's like, it's just because God's waiting for you, and listen to his voice calling. He's there.
You had talked about a certain book that your brother gave you that was pretty life-changing. I know the book
The
is really
way of
old. Is it like, do you know which one I'm talking about? Oh, I found it. No,
the
I
way
didn't.
of the master, or
Yeah, that's it.
revival golden key.
I'm
Yeah.
like, look, I'm
Pretty
like,
much.
yes, that's correct. It's your life. It's your
Yeah.
book. Yes. Well, so you talked about that Kirk was in the Left Behind, like those Left Behind movies. That was part of my generation too. We had those books.
I
There was
was
the
gonna
books,
say,
but
did your parents make you watch those movies?
I
Did
don't
you
think we
watch
even watched the movies. I think we just read the books. I don't remember that would have been consistent with our family
that?
situation. We didn't do a ton of screens. So I read the books. And then I thought you were going to say, oh, those Left Behind books really were the ones that impacted me. But you said, no, it's The Way of the Master by Ray Comfort that Kirk gave you. What was it in that book that really helped to change things for you?
It talked about, I never understood why Jesus died for me. You hear what the gospel is, oh, that Jesus died for your sin. And so he died, took your sin as a punishment upon himself. 3 days later, he rose again and sits with the Father. And I'm like, that's great. I believe in that. But I'm not really a sinner. So I never understood the phrase like that he died for my sin, because I always thought I was a very good person and a good moral person whose goodness outweighed the bad things that I did. My bad things were just so minor compared to what other people were doing. So I never understood what that meant. Jesus died for my sin. I'm like, I'm not really a sinner. I'm not a sinner compared to these people. So, I mean, I could easily look at other child stars. That was like my basis, that I could say, like, compared to all those child stars that are using drugs, are using alcohol, who have divorced their parents, who have sued them for money, like, who are just like, they've just lost it. I'm like, I'm not like them. I'm a really good person, and I'm respectful to my mom and dad. I have good friendships, all of that. So what that book helped me realize was the full gospel message, in that the standard by which God judges us for goodness is a different standard than what the world standard is. So yes, it's true. By the world standard, I would be considered a pretty good person. I give money to charity. I'm pretty kind, like all the things you can check off. I'm like, yeah, I'm a good person. But God's like, that's not what I'm judging you by. I judge by the heart, and I see the intention of your heart. I see all of it, even your thoughts. I know them. And so the book laid out the use of the 10 Commandments. And I'm like, of course, I know the 10 Commandments. I mean, at that time, I'm like, I couldn't, maybe not rattle off each one in order, but I generally know. Don't lie, don't steal, don't covet, don't cheat on your spouse, don't have an affair, don't, and I'm like, yeah, I haven't done any of those things. But then I'm like, but is that actually true? Have I ever told a lie? And I'm like, well, who hasn't? Come on. Who hasn't told a lie? And then the Bible says it's as, even if you break one of them, it's as if you've broken all of them. So by this standard of the 10 Commandments, are you good or bad? And I'm like, okay, well, yeah, clearly I've broken at least one of those commandments. Well, then I'm considered bad. And the bad is you've sinned. You're a sinner. And it like, it literally, my mind like blew open. And I was like, oh, I just didn't understand that God's standard was so different. And even these tiny little things that I'm like, oh, the world doesn't care. We all are like, a little white lie, that's not a big deal. What, your girlfriend looks terrible in that dress, but you're not going to tell her. You're going to lie to her because you don't want to hurt her feelings. all these little things that we just gloss over. And God's like, no, my standard is really high. And the fact is, none of you have kept it. And that's why Jesus came to pay that penalty for you, because he was perfect and died. It's that. And then, you can go into the Old Testament and it's the sacrificial lamb. It's Abraham and Isaac. It's like that's what the prequel is to that there needed to be a perfect lamb for a sacrifice. And that's who Jesus is. Well, I just never understood that. I never connected the dots. And I think there's a lot of us, because I talk to so many people all over the world, whether it's online in Zoom, podcasts, or deep conversations in person that I run into people. And there's a lot of us that are like, I'm good. I think if God had to judge me today, I'd be pretty good. I think I would make it to heaven because I'm pretty good. And that's where I was. And then I'm like, well, can I give you some questions to consider? Because you actually don't have to think or hope about getting into heaven. You could actually know 100% for sure. Because the truth is, you're not going to get there on your own. It's only through Jesus. He did it. So he gives us a free gift to be reconciled to God. There's nothing we can do on our own. And that's what the book talked about. That really opened my eyes up to the whole complete gospel message that I just never understood in my younger years.
One book changed my walk with God forever. For all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. I talked to this man recently who has a book coming out called God's Not Wrong. It might be called God is Right. I can't remember. Anyway, he was talking about how those 10 commandments, they're all actions. Don't murder, don't commit adultery, except for the last one, which says do not covet, which is a matter of the heart. It was like really powerful, that, like you said, the standard is different. And what a unique experience for you to be in that environment. Like you talked about how this Hollywood environment, there's all these parties, and your parents were pretty strict about what you could do and couldn't go do and what parts you were involved in and which parts you weren't. So you're seeing, the depths of the depravity in some situations. So yeah, that's an interesting perspective to come from. So that book, The Way of the Master by Ray Comfort, someone might be really interested in reading that. And you talked about how faith, you saw the transformation in your parents' marriage, that God made your parents' marriage new. And so you just had all these journeys along the way. People can read more about it and balancing it all. And talking about books then, books that are life-changing, you have this Book of the Month Club. Tell us the history here. It's called Generous Family. People can check it out at generousfamily.com. It is the #1 kids book club subscription for ages 2-ish to 12. And you get a book every month, a hardcover book in the mail about different Christian values. So what was the idea? When did it start?
Well, I fell in love with this company because of the very values that they're teaching. I love children's books. Let me just start off with that. One of my favorite things to do with my kids when they were younger and of all ages was read with them. I just loved it. And it was a way not only that I could connect with my kids, I could read books with them, and we could use funny accents and voices, and we could act it out. I think that's just the actor in me. It was just a fun thing to do. I love great illustrations, and it would always open up a conversation with us. And so I feel like books to me were like that little 30-minute episode of Full House. You're going to learn a lesson from it, and it's going to be wrapped up in a little bow by the end of it. And I always treated books that way, and I always chose books to read with my kids. Not every single one of them, but the majority of them. I wanted them to learn something from them. And so when I came in contact with the people of Generous Family, I just fell in love. And I'm like, this is everything that I love about kids' books, and putting biblical values in these books that are taught in a way that don't feel preachy. It's not, we're not hitting anyone over the head with the Bible. They're good moral values, but they all come from the Bible. And so there's tons of really great characters in here. And what I love is that, I mean, you can buy them just one book at a time if you want to, but it's also really great in being a book club that you would be sent a new book every single month. It also comes with like stickers and character cards that the kids can collect and play with. There's also a little digital prompt where you can then go on your computer and watch little animated versions of the book, which is really fun. And so, you know, I've been working alongside of them for a little over a year, maybe closer to 2 years now. And then I was like, I would love to write one of these books as well. Because here's the cool thing about these books. It's not just one author. It is a collection of people. They are pastors, they're moms, they're teachers, educators. And it's a group of people that write these books together. And so the pen name of the author is Betta to Give, which is so cute. And so I said, you know, I would love, yes, Betta to Give. I would love to do one. And so the newest book that is out that I wrote with them is called The Crazy Compromise. And this is about two best friends, and this is taken from my personal life, this story. And they love like everything about each other and they're best friends, except that they're rooting for two different teams, two different sports teams. And then they realize that they're like, I can't be friends with you because you're rooting for them and I'm rooting for this. And at the end of the story, you realize that, hey, love's got to win out, and that our relationships matter than being right. Yeah. And so that's where compromise comes in. And it's not compromise in the sense of compromising your values. It's just compromising things that don't make a big difference at the end of the day, and knowing that love is best. So my best friend and I, we've been best friends since we were 15 in 10th grade. And we actually we have so many similarities, but we don't share the same politics. We don't share the same religion. And yet we are best friends. So on the things that don't really matter, we can still love each other and just politely disagree, but there's too many things that we do love each other about to not have this incredible friendship. And that's what the Crazy Compromise in its simplest form is all about.
And it's so cool because you learn about that friendship in your book, the book for the adults, in Balancing It All. This is Delaney. Is that how you pronounce it?
So it can be either Delaney or Delaney. It's technically Delaney, but most people in her life call her Delaney. So she goes by both.
So this is one of your best friends for decades. And I thought this was a really interesting piece of the book, because in Balancing It All, you have a lot about friendships in there. And then your Crazy Compromise, your kids' book, is all about friendships. You meet in the 10th grade. She's the person, she's like in charge of helping the new people assimilate. So you're new to this school. It's basically like her job to help you feel welcome. And she was nervous to reach out because you were on TV. It's an interesting time in life in general. Just people are lonely and struggling with friendships. And yet this one, and you would have been in a really unique situation of, you know, people already know you or they already think they know you. And do they have the right motivations to be a friend? But you two hit it off right off the bat. You wrote about in the book, like she's been to one of the births of your children. How have you, I mean, I think friendships that long are pretty rare. What advice do you have for long-term friendships like that? I know obviously compromise is one because that's what the kids' book is about. But what are some of the other elements of that?
It's the investment, truly, because you do go through different seasons of life. I mean, I had all three of our children by the time I was 25 years old. My best friend got married right around her 40th birthday, and then had her daughter very soon after that at 41. So you can imagine the different seasons that we've been in life. They do not match at all. And we've talked about it over the years so much that our friendship has been important enough that we make the time and the effort and we keep calling, even if we're not kind of riding the same train, so to speak. And that's what's made the difference for us, is that there are other friends that I've loved, and some friendships are very seasonal. You know, they come in and out of your life and they're meant for a time and a place and they have purpose. And then it's okay when they kind of fade out, or it's just not serving each of the relationships anymore. But this one was too special for us to say, we're not having seasons where this is going to fade out permanently. So we're going to keep making time for each other and listening to each other and listen to their day, our stories, even though they're not maybe in the same season at that time. And I just love her too much and she loves me too much. And so it's the investment of time. And I think sometimes, yeah, we can just let it fade away, but you don't have to.
Wow. So you had teens when she has a toddler in completely different life stages. But then on the other hand, it's like that's a little bit of a gift. She got to be there when your kids were little and growing up, and then you have a little bit more capacity when she has a wedding and a child, and to be there in that capacity. I wondered, occasionally I'll read people's older books, Candace.
Mhm.
His book is a decade old. And then I'll bring up the friend that's in the book, and they'll be like, well, someone actually emailed me after and they were like, can you cut that out? Like after we'd already taped it, they were like, can you take that whole section about that friend out? So, I mean, what a testament to the investment there on both sides. And you talk a lot about that in the book. And you talk about friendship in other ways too. Like when you moved, so you grew up in California and then you get married. Now, your husband, Val, he's got sort of a similar story in the fact that he was working hard from age 5. I mean,
Mhm.
you hardly hear about that. I actually don't know anybody else. But he had a similar story. He was playing hockey as a really young child.
Yeah, I know. That's really what we connected over when we first met, was our hard work and having full-time jobs when we were children. But yeah, you know, he grew up in Russia when it was still the USSR. And so when I say he was playing hockey, even at 3, like he was playing hockey, 3, 4, 5, but that was the job. They had school, but his father and his grandfather were both Olympians. And so he and his brother were put into the programs of, you are going to learn this sport and excel at this sport. So he was trained in that way his whole life, and then came to North America when he was 17 to play professional hockey as well as his brother. And yeah, when we connected, I had not met another young man that had the kind of work ethic that he had that I knew very well. Most of the boys my age were just like, you know, we're going to high school. We're going to, and it's just like, oh, I remember a boy was like, you don't really work. You're like on a fun TV show. And boy, did I have some choice words for him. So to meet Val and really connect over what I consider being put into a very adult world at a young age, was so, it was just eye-opening for me to meet someone that I could connect with on those levels. And so we hit it off right away.
Yeah, the similarities were pretty striking, even though there was also a lot of really major differences. But you're talking about how he would get on the bus at 5 a.m. with his brother. They're 5 and 8 years old. They get on the bus at 5 a.m. They go to hockey. And then when school is over, they go back to hockey. So you were like, his life was hockey, school, hockey, school. My life was acting, school, acting, school. And then you also had a sort of similar, even though it happened, maybe years apart, but you also both had pretty like career it changes quite a bit. I mean, you're a professional athlete and then you're not. You're on this TV show that pretty much everyone's heard of and then you're not. So that's an interesting thing too, to transition out of something that that's that's that is that big of a deal. Like you both had that as well. So interesting, those similarities. And you talked about like when you said the boy that was like, you don't really work. I mean, you put the hours in here. Like you're at school at 8 o'clock at the set, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You have 4 hours of school, so you could bank hours for the next couple days. And then you're taping. And then on Friday, it said you sometimes were there till really late. It could take 4 to 5 hours. I mean, that's intense. That is intense to go from having that and then to moving to Canada. So you're in California and you're doing this, and then it ends, and then you move to Canada. That just had to be such a wild transition of having that full of a life to not having it.
Yeah, it was, which was where a lot of problems started happening just in my own being because I was only 18 years old. Put that on top of it. I mean, our brains aren't even completely formed and developed yet. And here I am, 18, or I guess I mean, I met him at 18, dating till 19. We were engaged, married at 20. So I guess 20 is when I officially moved over there. That's still very, very young. And yeah, it was having like so much fullness in my life to then having nothing and not even friends in the same city. And it was such shock to me. And that's where there was so much loneliness and then trying to evaluate my worth. Like, what am I supposed to do now? You know, am I washed up now? Like, did I have my full career and now I have nothing? Like, this is so weird. I'm 20 years old. This is usually the time when people my age are deciding who they want to be in their life, what they want to do. And I'm like, I'm 20 and I've already had this huge, amazing life, but now I feel like I'm starting at zero. And this is weird.
I mean, you'd already had a
So,
15-year career. It is wild. It's wild. Yeah, you're 20, you've had a 15-year career with all of these people that you're around. And then not only are you in a new spot with people you don't know, but it's cold. You're in Canada. You were in Canada for a long time.
we were in Montreal for 3 years and then Calgary for 3 years. And yeah, these Southern California warm bones just were not having that cold, wet weather.
And then you end up, okay, so the story is then you end up in Florida, but that's during
Yes.
9/11. So you had to take a tour bus to even get down there. So you get to Florida and
That
then
sounds,
that's that's a story.
it sounds like a movie. Like, oh, we had to take a tour bus. But legit, 9/11 had happened like, I think it was like 2 days or a week before we were supposed to get on a plane to go fly to now Florida, where my husband got traded with two kids and I was pregnant. I was like 7 months pregnant, but 9/11 happened and we still had to go to training camp. Like everything was still happening, but all the flights were down. Like air traffic control was ceased completely. So we were like, how are we going to get across the country? Well, I guess we have to drive. And then, the thought of my 7 month pregnant belly sitting in the passenger seat of a car for a week to get over there wasn't that ideal. And our dogs, we had our dogs. So we had a really great idea of renting a tour bus that like a musician would get in so we could get our whole family in there. My mom joined us. We had the dogs and everything. And we drove from California to Florida to get there in time for training camp.
It does sound like a movie.
Yes.
Wow. So you get there. The other thing that was like just a funny little detail in the book was you get there and I mean you're still pretty young at this point too. Like you got your kids uh and you end up in this neighborhood and you're like, we like the people. And you're like, this one lady came over and introduced herself and gave us cookies. And you were like, but they might have been poisoned, so I didn't eat them. There's
I
all
think
these different adventures in life, but it culminates with the fact that he ends up on this team in LA. So it's like you're gonna go back. You're like finally you get to go back to California. He's gonna be on the LA team. All your family and friends are gonna get to come watch him play, and then he gets injured.
Yeah.
He never
Yeah.
played on the team
And
really, except for preseason.
exactly. He played it was one preseason game and he got injured so badly that it was career ending. So yeah, I was in Africa on a mission trip, wasn't talking on the phone because we just weren't able to while I was over there. And so when I got to the airport at LAX, he picked me up and I'm like, how's everything? How'd the game go? And he was just like, nah, it was okay. And I'm like, what happened? He's like, well, I have to have surgery. Like, okay. And then as I'm like pulling this information out, because he just didn't even want to tell me, it was so disappointing. He was like, I'm done. That's it. It's it. I'll never play for the LA Kings. I'm gonna have surgery. And uh it was just, yeah, it was a horrible blow.
Yeah. I think those are the things that you don't really think about, Candace. Like, when it's so easy to sort of, I guess, idolize somebody else's life and to see those parts that are really shiny and, oh, how cool that must have been. But I think it's really good to read books like yours and to see that, well, the things that go up come down too. And anyone who is a professional athlete at some point is going to be done with that career and probably earlier than most people are done with their careers. And the same thing with all of it, like the acting and, it's not always the high. And it really gives a good, well-rounded message about not coveting. The 10th commandment of not coveting and seeing like that would be really hard. You wrote, it ended up that Val never played another game in the NHL, and I never even got to see him suited up as an LA King. How did he transition out of the professional athlete life?
You mean like in general
Yeah,
or?
well, you had said he did it very well. So, I mean, that's an interesting part too.
Oh,
Was it partially
oh
just
yeah.
because it had been 20 years or something?
Yeah, I mean, any professional athlete knows that they're going to have a second career. And if they're smart, they will start thinking about that earlier than later and even preparing financially for that. And that's something I'm so grateful for my husband because he is good with finances and, he's protective over those things. I think because he grew up so incredibly poor in Russia that when he learned all about finances, he wanted to understand it and have control over it, and not someone who came into money and is like, let's just spend it. Hey, I've got money for the first time in my life. Like he was like, no, I want to make whatever money I have last for the rest of my life in case that doesn't, we don't make any more again. But you're always thinking about a second career. And so he knew that he was going to have one. And when that time came, it came a little earlier than he thought it was going to. But he'd already been thinking about, he's a man that absolutely loves food and wine. He's one of the best chefs that I know. He just blesses our family every night with the most amazing meals. I share them on my story, on my socials all the time, and I'm just drooling over it because they're so delicious. And so yeah, so he had a plan in mind and he pivoted into a new career, pretty quickly after he retired, after he recovered from his injuries. Because, I was a nurse for a really long time for him. He had hip and back surgery in the same year. It was a lot. And then, after that, that's when we really switched roles, which you had mentioned before. It was like I went from now having this very full life to then having a life that I truly loved. It was just different in the way that it went, but being a full-time stay-at-home mom while my husband played his career out. And then we switched. It was like he was now home with the kids. I went back into acting, but at the same time, he was now prepping for his second career as well.
It is amazing to me, Candace, like how many similarities there can be between your family. You grew up with this, family, four kids, and your parents are together and you're having a lot of time together. Like you wrote about how your mom would make sure, like, if the show is getting taped in Hawaii, everyone who can go is going to Hawaii. Or if it's at Disney, like we're all going to go. And he grows up in the Soviet Union. You wrote he would often wait in line for 8 hours just to get a few rotten tomatoes to share with his mom and brother. His parents are divorced. His dad is a Russian swimming legend, Olympic medalist, hockey coach. And here you come together and have a lot of similarities. It's kind of bizarre, the fact that you've had
It
these
is.
big career pivots. And so interesting to read about. And I think that a lot of people have career pivots and life transitions. And it's inspiring to read about how you navigated yours. You wrote he dove straight into the mecca of fine dining, became an instant foodie, and that has lasted. So, okay, talk to us then about your career pivots. So, obviously, there's the Hallmark movies. When I went on to see all of the things, you've got these four books plus this kids' friendship book. When I went on to see all of the things, because, I was like a Full House fanatic. And when I looked at the list, I was like, this is so incredibly long. All of these different things that you have done, but you stepped out for a little bit. You're home. He's doing his hockey career. Talk to us about stepping back in and like all of the interweaving things that you have going on now.
Sure. Well, yeah. So I stepped back into entertainment after taking that 10-year break in my early 30s, and I'm 49 now. So I've been back at it for a while. And I think that a lot of people are surprised once they start looking up if they might know me from Full House, but if they're not, an avid follower of the things that I do, they're like, they get surprised.
Yeah, no, that look that you
And
just gave, the look you just were like this, I was like, yeah, that was my look. Because I was like, oh my goodness. Like I knew about the Hallmark movies and I've had Nikki DeLoach on. So I'm like, I've seen, the different Hallmark movies. But when I went through the list, it was it's really incredible. And I want to commend you for that. I think that a lot of times we can get stuck in feelings of like, this is different or maybe not what I thought it would have been. I was very impressed with how you've invested your life.
thank you. I really appreciate that. I think, those 10 years that I stayed home with my kids and was a devoted mom, and that was also when my faith was really growing in my life. And so God had done a whole just work on my heart, my soul, my mind. And when I went back into the industry, something that I always wanted to do if God would open those doors and if the time was right, I went back in now looking at a career through a different lens. Again, as I said, I have always been in family entertainment, and that was something I still wanted to continue. But it was even more than that. I'm also very, very entrepreneurial, an entrepreneurial person or have an entrepreneurial mindset, which is why I have several businesses and companies. And I just looked at it and I'm like, God, I'm so grateful for the time that God grew me into being a child of God and knowing Him and having the right directives and reasons for then going back into the industry. My whole purpose is how can I help people move one step closer to Jesus, to knowing Him? And it doesn't mean that all the things I do are faith things or Christian things. I'm in the business of entertainment, but specifically family entertainment. That is what I am through and through. And sometimes that includes faith, and sometimes it doesn't, but it always includes family. And so the last 20 years for me have been pretty incredible because I think I just came back with a vengeance. Like I took this break. I was a kid. A bunch of people told me you can never take a break for 10 years and think that entertainment will take you back.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I kind of was like, I have a little bit of a fighter spirit in me. And I'm like, I'm going to prove you all wrong. And I will say that that was a little bit of my motivation, but most of my motivation is like, well, God, either you're going to help me, that's either going to happen or it's not, depending on how you see fit. But I mean, I have made over 50 television movies in my career, and I think over 300 episodes of television, which is a lot. It really is a lot. And then beyond that, I have written several books. I've written many devotionals. I actually have a new devotional, two new ones that are coming out this year and one next year.
What are they
And
called?
um, 100 Days of Joy and Strength and Rise and Renew. And so those are coming out with HarperCollins. And I'm very excited about those, but I have several other ones that have already been out. And so I've written a lot of books and devotionals, and getting people to read the Bible it's my biggest passion in the world, because the Bible is not only the most incredible book, but it's truly the most incredible book. And I want people to understand how amazing it is. Like the historical stories just pop off the page in a way that I never understood. The Bible just looked like this big, daunting, really long, boring book about God, and he's mean in the Old Testament, but then he's nice in the New Testament. And it's like, no, that's not what that book is about. And so it's a huge passion of mine to get people to read the Bible. And then with that, I have a company called Candy Rock Entertainment. And so I've been producing all of the films that I've done for the last really like 10 years. And then specifically the last 30 movies that I've done, I produced them myself with my company. And we had our first feature film called Unsung Hero that was out last year. That did really, really well at the box office. And that is a beautiful story about family. If you haven't seen that movie, I highly suggest it's streaming now, so you can find it on Stars or Amazon, things like that. It's beautiful. And what else? I have a podcast called the Candace Cameron Bure podcast. So I encourage you, if you like to hear what I do differently on my podcast is that I deep dive one particular topic for an entire season. So I have one guest co-host for 3 months, and we will talk about one specific topic like parenting. Or my very first episode was with Terry Cobble, and we talked about the Trinity for 3 months. And I have the newest season that's just about to start. We're talking about spiritual warfare with JP Pokluda, who's a pastor in Waco, Texas. So it's an interesting podcast if you like deep dive conversations, really, really encouraging too. And I'm also, okay, I'll stop here.
No, keep going.
But lastly, I had moved from Hallmark Channel 3 years ago to the Great American Family Channel and Great American Media, which also includes the streamer Great American PureFlix, which PureFlix is really predominantly Christian content, family, but mostly Christian. And then Great American Family Channel is family entertainment with a little sprinkle of faith in there. And that's where you can see all of my latest Christmas movies and all of that. But with that move, I also became the chief creative officer of Great American Media, because if I was going to move from Hallmark Channel, which I did 30 movies over there and did have a wonderful relationship with them, I wanted to, for different reasons, one, that I could share my faith more freely at a channel, which this has allowed me to, but I also wanted the opportunity to help build a channel and a company, because that's how I'm wired. And that gave me that opportunity. So if you haven't checked out Great American Family Channel or Great American PureFlix, I highly suggest you do.
There's actually so many things you can check out because you can check out the podcast, which I saw season 8. There's a lot of seasons already.
Yeah, we're up to airing our 10th season.
Wow.
Yeah, finished our 11th one, which is pretty great.
Yeah, that's incredible. And the book club subscription and all of these other things you brought up, I think what you get from like the whole package, just this 1 hour time block that we had together and reading these books I have of yours, is that there's a lot of opportunities out there and that you teach people how to transition well. And I think you also teach that it's not easy either. Like you have the hardships in there and you're like, look, people go through transitions. I think that's what you get out of the books is that, everybody has that. Everybody has the ups and downs. You talked about even when you entered back in, that you're back into acting and it's been 10 years and you're so excited, but also it was really overwhelming. And you had written part of your journal entry in there where you said, I'm not enjoying it the way I hoped I would. So all of that, it's just really real life. Everyone deals with transitions and change, especially this day and age. So what an honor. Also, my first crush was Fred Savage too. So we are going to bond over that.
Yes.
And when he was in The Princess Bride, I was like, I wish I could have been the grandpa that read him the story. Like I would have been a good reader. I was kind of jealous of that grandpa. So anyway, this has been a total honor. We always end our show real quick with a favorite memory from your childhood that was outside.
Hmm. Oh, I have so many. Oh, growing up in the 80s was the best, okay? I just, yeah, we spent a lot of time outdoors and it was so good. Favorite, I mean, from the countless bike rides we take as a family, that was probably my favorite, like all in a little train line of, 6 bikes all riding through the valley together. Um, I have great memories of playing laser tag with our friends. We did that like every Friday and Saturday. And I don't know, bicycles is like the biggest thing for me because that was the freedom that we had as kids, that my parents had given us the parameter of the neighborhood that went far beyond our own street, but like, the big streets with the lights, with the stop lights on them. So any of the streets that just had the stop signs, we had this freedom to ride our bikes, around a mile or two radius, which was so fun as a kid. And now I'm like, I don't think I would ever let my kids do that because, depending on where you live, the traffic would just scare me.
Mhm. The world has changed in more ways than just the media that we consume. It is different, but what an honor. A lot of things that are the same too. I learned so much. I really, really love balancing it all. It's like a 10-year-old book, but I love it. I've got Reshaping It All, and I know you have other books. I'll make sure I'll link them in the show notes, and so many opportunities to sort of connect with what you're doing and to be inspired. You could have just sat back probably and done nothing, but you didn't. And you are really pushing your faith out into the world and impacting people and impacting families and impacting kids. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Ginny. That was awesome. Thank you. I honestly, I have to tell you, because I do a lot of interviews and I love when questions are fresh for me, and you did so much research and I very much appreciate it. It makes such a difference. It makes you a great interviewer, and I'm sure you know that. And because of that, you get a better interview from the people talking. So thank you so much.
Aww.
It was a joy. It really was.
Well, thanks for saying that. I was so excited. I'm still excited about it. And it's an honor. I can't think of a bigger honor than to read someone's book and get a chance to ask them questions. And, in this case, it was like some of them were about the fame. Like one time 20,000 people show up to get your autograph. I was like, these are all great stories. But so thank you for answering all the ones that I felt like were kind of silly, but I was curious about anyway.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Yes, you said they can get and people can get $20 off the homeschooling kit. I'm going to splice that in. There's a $20 off. I'll put that in the show notes. People can get $20 off the homeschooling kit through Generous Family.
It's Give20 is the code.
Okay. We'll make sure we include that. That's super exciting. I know there's a lot of homeschooling families that listen in. Thank you.